And thank you for joining us in part 2 of our series, Parenting in a Pandemic. I'm Shira Berkowitz, Director of the School Programs and a Teen Therapist in Madrigos Midwest. As many of you know, we provide a social and emotional curriculum to the Chicago Jewish Day Schools called the Ray Family Foundation, Steps to Healthy Living. Now that our children are home due to the COVID-19 crisis, we are continuing to partner with the schools to engage the children on specific topics to help them deal with today's struggles, all via Zoom or phone classes. Currently, they are focusing on feelings, specifically anxiety and fear, and then moving on to dealing with disappointments and lost opportunities through an understanding of the stages of grief. This year, we expanded our school program to include parent education as well. We hosted a number of parenting workshops in the community on various social and emotional health topics. We are excited that we are now able to continue the parent program using a digital platform, enabling us to reach all parents in our community and beyond. Our speaker this evening needs no introduction, certainly in the Chicago Jewish community. But as there are others joining us tonight, I will briefly introduce her. Rachel Zimmerman, LCPC, holds a master's degree from the Illinois School of Professional Psychology and Clinical Psychology. She works with a variety of different issues with clients in private practice, including body image, depression, and anxiety. Rachel has a background in cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma work, and EMDR. She is a dynamic presenter on boundaries, abuse prevention, and healthy relationships. She currently works in private practice and is a student advisor at Hannah-Sachs-based Yaakov High School. She's also the Madrigos Steps teacher for the 9th and 12th grades at HSBY, and most importantly, a really good friend of mine. After Rachel's presentation, we will be taking anonymous questions from the participants. Please use the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen to submit questions, as we will not be taking questions live. I will now turn the screen to Rachel, who will educate us on setting boundaries in tight spaces and expanding our boundaries in distance.
Hi, everyone. Shira, I have to say thank you for that introduction, but the one that meant the most to me was that I'm a good friend. You're never quite sure where you stand with people, just kidding, but thank you. That means a lot. So I have to say, I was very nervous about being asked to give this speech at many levels. The first is just the idea of parenting in a pandemic. What do I even have to say on it? Do I have the time to do it? Am I equipped to do it? And one of the things as I was preparing, I was telling my family over dinner some of the things that I wanted to say tonight, and my kids started making fun of me like, oh yeah, you're going to give a whole thing on parenting. Should we, stand outside your door and yell, hypocrite, or should we come on with signs that say, she yells at us every night, and that whole idea. There's something very inside my stomach when I think I'm going to talk about parenting that gets me almost to be like, ooh, what do I know about parenting? And I guess at the same time, what I do know is that I am in the trenches. We are all in the trenches together. And in a lot of ways, when I speak and what I'm saying here today are things that I am trying, things that I'm talking about, things I'm working on with my students, things I'm working on with my clients, things I'm working on with myself. So in order to be able to get started, I feel like I need to be able to say, this is one of the hardest time periods that I feel we as a community have gone through. There has been a ton of inspiration. There has been a lot of amazing things happening around us, but it has come from hardship, from things happening around us that are, I think I can say the word because every other person in the world uses this word, unprecedented. So before we get started, I would like to tell you the thing that I try to do several times a day. I do with my clients, I do with my students, I do with everyone, which is I'd like us all to take a minute to breathe. Part of why this is all so difficult is that we get anxious and we get overwhelmed. And when we do, we start breathing a little lighter and we start not getting as much oxygen to the brain, and our shoulders start going up and up and up. And then all of a sudden your kid asks you for something, you're like, leave me alone, right? And one of the things that we need to learn how to do the most is breathe, get oxygen back to our brains. So in the name of sounding a little bit too therapist-y, you'll forgive me, but that's what I want to do first. In order to take a proper breath, I know this is silly, lady, I've been breathing my whole life, but you need to fill your body with air when you breathe in and contract when you breathe out. So we're gonna do this 5 times. And I know for me that I put my hands right under my ribs, and so that I can feel myself expanding when I breathe in, so I know I'm getting my body some air, and contracting and kind of deflating a little bit when I breathe out. So let's do that 5 times. Letting our shoulders sink a little bit. Putting behind all the different things that came at us today. Trying to tell ourselves right here, right now, this is all I need to be doing. And I'm doing the best I can. Now, I often will do this when I'm trying to transition from work to school to the kids, to trying to help this, to trying to make dinner. I will take a second, sometimes hide in the bathroom, my favorite place to hide, and I will breathe in and breathe out and slow things down for half a second and then continue. So thank you for allowing me that therapist-y type break in the beginning, but I know it helped me. I hope it helped you. So my title tonight isn't talking about keeping boundaries in the home and expanding boundaries outside the home. And I think that people probably think I'm going to talk about setting limits and saying how to say yes and no to your children and setting a schedule and setting a routine. And while all those things are really important, what I actually want to talk about tonight is a person's sense of self. Anne Catherine wrote a book literally called Boundaries. And I believe the subtitle is Where You Begin and I End, or Where I End and You Begin. And when I'm doing trainings for people, I often ask them, what is the definition of boundaries to you? And oftentimes they'll say limits, lines. I remember one time I was doing, a training where there were Israelis in the room. They said, oh, it's gulot, the borders. And I was like, right. But boundaries between two people, boundaries between where I end, where I am, who I am, my emotional space. It can be confusing, especially in relationships with people, because there are days where my boundaries, who I am as a person, can be expansive. I'm able to help, I'm able to do, I'm able to run around, I'm able to hear this one, I'm able to hear that one. And then there are days where I feel depleted or something else is going on and I'm unable to help you with this. That is too much for me. And so boundaries are often fluid, right? And they're supposed to be. Right now, we're living in a time where as parents, we are trying to not only manage our own boundaries, we are trying to manage the boundaries of everybody else around us. And depending on your job or what else you're doing, possibly the boundaries of other people in that realm as well, right? And those boundaries are constantly changing, constantly on top of ourselves. And so part of what we need to do, and what I like to kind of visualize, and I apologize if you've heard me say this before, is that when I think of boundaries, I often think of a person's own backyard. And I think Miss Catherine actually used this example in her book, that your boundaries, your emotional boundaries, are your backyard. And every single person, regardless of if they live together in the same house or not, has their own backyard. Now, let's say you have a friend, and in their backyard, there's weeds, and there's flooding, and there's wild animals. You can go into somebody else's backyard to try to help them. But at the end of the day, everybody has to return to their own house and their own yard, and everyone needs to know that they are ultimately responsible for their own yard and not ultimately responsible for somebody else's yard. And especially when we're talking about teenagers, they are at the point where they really do have, and they'll tell you this point blank, their own yard that they can do themselves and they don't need you, right? Now, we know that they need us oftentimes more than they think, more than they care to admit. But at the end of the day, we are not responsible for their yard. We are responsible to help them take care of their own yard. Okay, and then you're probably like, Rachel, what are you talking about? I don't do gardening, yards, this, that. Are we talking about parenting tonight? Yes, don't worry, I'll get there. I haven't totally gone off yet. What's important for us to kind of keep in mind in taking care of people's boundaries are that what has happened in this whole time period is that it's like you took everybody's normal life and normal routine and went woo in the air, okay? Nothing is as it was. Everything is different. what I know, what I routine, what I rely on. Some things I rely on aren't there. Other things that I'm not used to being able to rely on are there. Everything is topsy-turvy. Now, that doesn't mean it's all bad. Even working in the school I work for, I was in charge of supervising a little bit of the day the other day when they had locker cleanup. And some of the students expressed to me that they actually can handle school better from home. Like, not everybody is struggling so much. So let's put that out there also. Because of these different boundaries. For some people, like, one of the girls, I was checking in with her over email, and she wrote me back, she's like, I'm a natural introvert. Socializing with everybody every day is like the hardest part of my day. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Now, she was a little bit saying it like in a joke, but I do believe her, right? So the idea that what's happening, and when we are thinking with our parents' hat on, each one of our kids, what is going on with them? We have to think about their own strengths, their own weaknesses, what's working well for them actually, what's not working well for them. And then trying to recreate what we want to try to do then is, and what I want to spend some time talking about tonight is, how do we help them almost reclaim their mental life to be able to put back together what they need in order to get through this. So in order to do that, I think a really important question is to be able to go to them and ask them, what do you need in order to get through this? So this is one-on-one, privately, and this, this can even go to younger kids. But right now I'm primarily talking about adolescents. To be able to say to them, okay, there's a lot going on right now, some hard, some easier, all sorts of things, right? But what do you need from me, or what do you need in general in order to get through this? Now, the point of that question actually is twofold. The first is that there is almost subtitles on that. It's as if you're communicating to them, you can do this, right? You are able to get through this. And there's a message that I like to get across to my students, to myself, to my clients, to everybody, which is, this is hard, but you can handle hard. This is sometimes a mantra that I tell myself during more difficult times of the year, or difficult times in general. I'll say, I can do hard. I've handled hard before, I can do it again, right? And that is the subtitle to the question, because by saying, what do you need in order to get through this? The message is, because you can get through this, you can do this. And not only can you get through this, you actually can succeed, you can do well. So the subtitle here is to be able, and depending on which kid and how they're doing, if you have a kid who's really struggling, they might right away be like, I don't know, I can't. Make this stop. Make Corona go away, right? And we can validate that response, because that's a good wish. But at the end of the day, the message is, I know this is so hard, but I also know that you can do this. This is tough. You are tougher. You just have to help me think of what tools you need to be able to get through this. Okay, so again, the first thing about that question is it gives those subtitles of, this is tough. You are tougher. Let's start thinking about what you can do, because I know you can do this. The second thing is it really gets them to start thinking about, what do you need in order to get this done? And we can be creative. We can be expansive. So just depending on the kid, depending on the age, depending on their talents, there could be things like they say, I need an hour by myself without any of my siblings around every day. They could say things like, I need to be able to take a walk or get out of this house physically at least once a day. I don't care that it's raining. They might say, I need to physically see my friends at least once a day. They may say, I need to know that I have my favorite cereal in the pantry every day. They might say, I'm trying to think of different examples and things. I've always wanted to learn how to play guitar, and you always said it wasn't a good time. The time, like, I need it now. I need something to fill my nights, right? It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm used to hanging out. I need something. Like, can you help me think of or look through things to be able to fill that time? I need to not have my bedtime be at midnight anymore. I need it to be at 1 a.m. because the day is so stressful. I need another hour to decompress. Okay, so a few things about the requests now that I've given you a few examples. The first is that these are requests. This is a brainstorming session. And you might even want to say from the beginning, I can't say that I'm going to be able to do or give or let anything you ask for, right? But I want you to put it on the table because I want to try to at least make a piece of almost anything you have to say work. And I want to be able to have a discussion back and forth. So let's take I need to see my friends every single day, because that's a common one. So depending on your comfort level, on your family's own situation, on your doctor, on lots of different things. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not pretending to be one, but I am someone who's going to tell you that kids' mental health is almost as important as their physical health at this point. So trying to figure out a way to safely make something like that work, can be great. One of the things that that one girl I was able to help enable for her in conversation with her parents is that every day, right after school ends, she hops in her car, she drives to her parents' house, to her friend's house. Her friend stays on the front walk. The friend stays in the car, like at the curb, and they sit there and they talk like that for about 5 minutes. And then they blow each other kisses and the girl drives home. And it really ended up making, the student I was working with feel like, I had a need met. I got to see her, and not just on a screen. I mean, we all know that although this is incredible and we're making it work and yay Zoom, there's nothing like human interaction, to see them, to experience them, that can't be replaced in video. We're doing a fantastic job of making it work and being creative, but to see someone can mean a lot. So that's an example of a discussion. Now, what if your daughter comes back to you and says, I need more than that? Like, that's ridiculous, So then it's a discussion back and forth of like, listen, I'm trying to balance physical needs, physical health, the fact that this person in our family is compromised, this, but I also really want to give you what you need. So help me here to keep this safe and to put limits on it, right? It's a discussion back and forth. Let's say they make a request that is, that's not healthy. Let's say they say, I need a half a dozen Dunkin' Donuts every single day. That's what I need to make it work. For whatever reason, you may not think that's a good idea. So it's like, okay, I hear you. You like to use food as treats. Okay. So let's figure out a system. Can we, if you could get through, a certain amount of things, or if you can help me cleaning up the kitchen or whatever, can we have a special bonding date where we drive to the Dunkin' Donuts, drive through 3 times a week and get a donut, right? Can we shift that need into saying, I hear you. I don't want to take that as unreasonable. Can we shift that into something where maybe he wants to be by himself to get the donut, but maybe not, in which case you can go with him, which is a bonus because that means extra bonding time or one-on-one time. But it also is trying to shift it towards, okay, that can work, but it can't be a daily thing. Someone, your kid may say, I want no bedtime. And from experience that just will not work. The kid will melt down every single day. Okay, I hear you. Let's negotiate. Let's work on that, because I hear you that you need more time. I hear you that you think you need more limits, but that's not going to work for me. So let's figure this out together. The other thing that I will say is that if possible, to nudge them into some form of exercise or movement of some kind, even if they're not asking for it, is incredibly helpful. We find that when people actually move around, exercise, do something, they feel better. They get out that energy in order to regain that energy. You expend energy and it actually refills you as opposed to always exhausting you. When kids say, I need more time on screens, I need more time in bed, I need more, I'm not saying that there aren't pieces of that we can say, okay. But we know that when kids start to cocoon like this, that is a recipe for watching them get more sad, get more melancholy, and then possible depression, depending on the situation, right? So we want to help kids move and go, right? The idea of let's get you moving. For a kid, you may want to say, okay, I found this really fun walking training plan online that will help us be able to run a mile within a week or two. I found this old basketball hoop that I can actually attach to the side of the house that you can play out there. Trying to help them get movement well, as long as you can encourage them to do so, can be really helpful. You know, ironically, definitely, I'm known for pushing people into exercise only because, you know, and it's no secret that it's one of my main forms of coping mechanisms, but just that we know that study after study shows that it really helps people, you know, the adrenaline release, it really helps people feel like revived and an ability to do, and just like the stress release of it. One of my clients, and if she's around, thank you for allowing me to say this, you know, when she had come to me, she said, I'll come to you as a, you know, as a therapist, but I've heard you make people exercise, and I want to be clear, I'm not going to do that. So I'll come to you, but I'm not going to exercise. I'm like, no problem. You don't have to exercise. No problem. It's been about a year later. Not only does she exercise, she like makes her whole family exercise. She like tells her friends they need to hang up and stop fetching and go exercise and call her back. I mean, she is like, you know, I cannot like stop laughing at the beginning story of this. But to get people out the door, sometimes they need incentives. Sometimes you need to do it with them as a parent, doing it together. You know, I bought a few of those exercise classes for like some of my kids to do online. I found they weren't doing them. So when I said, okay, I'll do them with you, all of a sudden they loved it and it was so much fun. Now, is that expending your own time and energy? Yes, and I'll come back to that in a few minutes. But the idea of trying to do something with them, but you know, it is important. Now, let's say your kid says, I don't know. You ask them, what do you need in order to get through this? And they say, I don't know. So the message back is, I hear you. You're right. This is hard. It's okay to not know. I'm going to come back to you tomorrow and ask again, because I know that there are things that you can do in order to be able to ride the wave of this. Again, this is tough. You are tougher. And in life, we all have things that we do that help make it a little easier. In order to do that, one of the things that can help the kid who says, I don't know, nothing, is that you need to be able to do this for yourself. One of the things that I know is that when all of this is going down and I started to see the writing on the wall, and, you know, obviously we didn't know how long, and we still don't, but, you know, one of the things I said, I turned to my husband, I said, Svi, this is what I need. And he looked at me, he's like, did I ask? And I was like, no, but I need to run every single day. I don't care if it's only for 5 minutes, but I must every single day to be able to hang my hat that I will be okay and I will get through any day, because I know I will get out or go on the treadmill or whatever to run every single day. Are you listening? He's like, yes, ma'am. And truthfully, to give him so much credit, he has enabled that again and again and again. Now, there have been other things where I said, okay, I need this. I can't do dinner like this anymore. I need this, right? So part of what you need to do as a parent in order to do this is to be able to go through this process yourself. After this talk tonight, or even now as I'm talking, to say, what do I need? What is there something that I can do that will actually feel special or good? Is there, you know, someone that I love talking to? You know, someone else told me, like an adult lady, that like a few times a week, she drives to her friend's house. She sits outside her house with a cup of coffee. Again, she sits in the car. Her friend sits a chair on the lawn. They talk for 3 to 5 minutes. They sip their coffee, and then she goes home. And she said, she's like, that's like everything to me. I wait for that. I depend on that. Can I do it every day? I can't do it every day. You know, are my kids oftentimes late for school for a few minutes, you know, for school because I'm doing this? Yes. But I come home so much happier and calmer. And my kids know that this is what Mommy Ima needs in order to make this work. So in order for us to be able to give this message across, we have to do this ourselves. So that when the kid says, I don't know, there's nothing, you can say, let me give you some examples of the things that I'm doing that I don't usually do, but I'm doing special in order to be able to have the energy and the sense of peace and the peace of mind to be able to get through this. Because this is hard, but I'm tough, and I know you are too. Going back to that point for a minute. So basically, I can imagine you're sitting there thinking, so Rachel, what you're proposing is that I go to each one of my kids or members of my family, and depending on each one of you, that could be a lot of people, and say, and what do you need to make this work? And what do you need to make this work? And I'm already not making it, but you want me to add, like, get all these extra requests of like, I need to be alone for an hour. I need a guitar. I need lessons. I need, like, you know, to drive to the moon. And you want me to make this happen. You're out of your mind. Okay, I'll go back to section 8. Breathe. What we're trying to do here is get to a place where people get what they need, and that when they have an ability to take care of their own emotional yard and feel that they have it more together, they will be able to operate from a better place of strength so that they ultimately will not need as much of your emotional energy. So we are expending energy, just like with exercise and just like with so many of these things, in order to refill our cups and to feel that we can give better. And so you need to really think to yourself, what is it that I need in order to be okay with this? And what is it that I can do and build into my schedule, and very consciously say to my kids, this is what I'm going to be doing today so that I feel that I can be the best mom to you guys for the rest of the day. Or this is what I'm going to be doing at the end of the day, and this is what I need from you in order to make that happen so that I can wake up tomorrow morning smiling and ready to go again. Okay? So that message of being able to take care of yourself and reach out to, you know, to each one of their kids, I think is really important. And that also just allows them to create this sense of identity of what they need, and possibly a sense of like, there's opportunities here of things I never could have done regularly that I get to do here. Okay. So in talking about setting boundaries, what we're really again saying is, how do you help each kid set their own emotional boundaries so that they can get back to work being able to take care of their own emotional yard, and that you can take care of yours, so that it just feels in general that the load is a little lighter and you've given them the tools they need. The next piece is expanding boundaries outside of the home. So, you know, a friend of mine said to me, you know, I keep listening to these parenting classes and everyone keeps talking about like, do chesed, do more chesed, have your kids do chesed. And I feel like I am tapped out. If my kids want to do chesed, like, let them wash the dishes, let them take care of their little siblings for a minute. Like, I can't. So what I want to say is that part of, you know, I think of it as chesed, but I also more think of it as, can we help our adolescents, our teenagers, and ourselves create or strengthen relationships outside of our homes that they normally don't have the time or the ability to do so. One of the cute things, you know, for those of you who know my father-in-law, Joey Zimmerman, great, my in-laws are wonderful people. So Joey loves Jewish history. It's like his favorite topic in the whole world. He also loves his grandchildren, and it's been very difficult. The grandparents are going through a pretty hard time themselves in a lot of ways here. So one of the things I suggested to one or two of my older boys is I said, why don't you call Zadie and ask him if he'll teach you about Jewish history 2 or 3 times a week? Now, I will tell you, and it's okay if you're listening, Dad, that when I first said that to them, they're like, really? We're like doing stuff the whole day. Now you want us to listen to Zadie talk about Jewish history? I was like, come on, guys. It's so nice for Zadie. Do it. The fascinating thing is they've been doing it now for a few weeks. They love it. They get special time with Zadie that they don't normally naturally get. And it's not just my father-in-law talking to them. It's also all of a sudden them talking to him. And it's forming this bond that, like, my kids don't talk to him for like half an hour at a time, several times a week. I wish they did, but they don't. But now they are. So it created a situation where, with some creativity, we met a need in terms of my grandparents missing their grandkids. We met a need in terms of like my kids needing to bond and have relationships outside of the people who are living in this address. And we were able to do it. There are people, you know, oftentimes, let's say you have like relatives in Israel, cousins that like you never really get to talk to. The time change is hard. Maybe this is the time to have like, maybe like the, you know, the little kids put on a skit for each other. The Israeli kids do first, and then the American kids do second. And like they get to meet each other. One of my neighbors actually has a daughter or granddaughter that usually comes in for Sukkot and Pesach. So my daughter was very bummed that like this girl her age who's usually here didn't come in. So I said, great, let's set up a pen pal. Let's write to her. I'm sure she's bored also. So she actually, like old school, takes out a pen and paper and writes a letter, puts it in, and they've been writing each other back and forth, and they send each other little games and things like little Sudokus, little crossword puzzles. And this relationship is forming. People who didn't have time to talk to camp friends, all of a sudden, like they may have the time. You know, one of the things, you know, that like I know has been really difficult is that our simcha is happening when people are on their own, bar mitzvahs and brises and shalom zachars and all those things, you know, weddings. Even if you don't know them, to be able to every week say, okay, guys, we're going to bake cookies for the people in our shul that are having a bar mitzvah. I know we don't know them so well, and maybe we wouldn't normally have brought cookies, but let's try to make something big. Now, if that feels like too much, then don't do it. You know, again, it has to be from a place of let's feel connected. Let's feel good. Let's reach out to people. Because one of the things I find is that we're so siloed and cocooned. And that this can be an opportunity to say, there is more time, there is more opportunity to reach out, to connect to those people, to build those type of relationships, to build this other type of relationship. We just need to be creative. You know, and sometimes it's a matter of like just trying, like the other thing is that we know that there are kids in every grade that have a harder time socially and an easier time socially. So if you know that your child has an easier time socially, maybe encourage them to reach out to the kids that don't necessarily have a hard time. You say, listen, you don't have to talk to them for an hour, call them up or text them to say, hey, thinking of you, what are you up to, right? That the idea being is that we take the time to connect to others, to give to others. And I don't mean this in a selfish way, but we know that when we give to others, that when we connect to others, that oftentimes what ends up happening is that we feel good, we feel happy. You know, this past Friday, you know, there was a bar mitzvah of somebody that we are pretty good friends with, and I dropped off a kugel. And in truth, I was happier the rest of the day. I have no idea if they were happier or if they liked the kugel, but I know that I was, right? And that my kid who was assigned to drop it off was. So the idea being is that if we can think of things that help fill us, that help keep us feel fulfilled, right? Because it's more important now that we do things that kind of take care of us, take care of those mental and emotional needs, so that we feel at the end of the day, I got through another day, but I didn't just get through it. There was actually some good things about it. It actually was fun. I'm actually getting opportunities, right? And now this is all in the backdrop of people are still getting sick. There are still things happening. And I don't mean that in a provoking way. It's just the reality. So possibly also helping, one of the things I think is really hard for kids in going through all this is, I have a short attention and memory span. Probably most kids do as well. So one of my own kids asked me, you know, I think it was yesterday, she's like, so no one's sick anymore, right? So why aren't we leaving our houses? To them, it's almost as if it's over. Like what, people are still sick because they're not out, they're not seeing, and hopefully they're not reading the news every day, right? So the idea that like, why are we still here? Isn't it better yet? So another good thing to think about is reaching out to organizations and finding out, like, are there people who need meals who are still sick? Because my understanding is that for a lot of people, this knocks them out. This virus can be very hard to overcome, and it can knock them out for weeks, if not, you know, a month at a time. So helping to find out and helping your child to say, this person is still really struggling with this virus. Why don't we make them dinner? Why don't we make them this? Why don't we offer to Zoom with their children for a little bit and keep them entertained so that they can rest? I think that does two things. Again, it helps fill them up with the chesed of it, but it also helps them see, no, this is still going on. We're still doing this and staying home and not going out and all of this because something pretty, you know, important is happening around us, and we still need to be respectful and keeping people safe. So again, what we're trying to do here is even though we're confined to the home, and we talked about the things that we do within the home to kind of create those like personal boundaries so that we feel like we're filled up energy-wise and mental space-wise. But we also want to make them feel, just because we can't leave and go and do and socialize and interact doesn't mean we can't connect. doesn't mean we can't do for, doesn't mean we can't give. And the more we can help our kids expand, build relationships they never would have built, connect to this person, give to this person, the better that they're going to be. You know, one of my favorite books is called The How of Happiness. That was written by a social psychologist. And one of the things that she did is, or the kind of the premise of the book is that she studied happy people, people who reported to be happy, sort of found the traits that were the most common in them, and then tried to recreate those things in other people. To try to like kind of get to what are the things that make us the most happy. She found that life circumstances was a much smaller percentage of what makes people happy. She found that some of the happiest people are the people with chronic illness, the people, you know, who are in poverty-stricken countries. It had less to do with circumstance than it had to do with with mindset, with a few different things. The number one thing that she talked about was gratitude. Number two was meaningful relationships. Number three was finding something you're passionate, that, like she said, finding your flow. And then there was a few more, but those were like the top three. And sort of just kind of thinking, oh, and another one which is worth mentioning is this idea of almost that we would call like having an ayin tov, that choosing to have a mentally optimistic mental foreground. Like things are hard things are happening, but I'm choosing to concentrate on the things that are going well, not because I'm a naive Pollyanna-ish optimist, but because in doing so, I allow myself to operate better and be able to accomplish more and be able to give more. And I will give time to some of those more negative things later, but to fill my day and fill my mental foreground with the more positive things works better for me and works better in terms of our overall sense of happiness and completion. Okay, so in trying to kind of like bring this all together, the most important things I think are really this idea of going to each kid and with this idea that every person has their own emotional life, their own emotional backyard that has to be put together, and asking them, what do you need in order to get through this, in order to be able to do this? And with the idea that you're trying to tell them this is tough, but you are tougher. And also that you're helping them kind of give tools back into their hands to be able to accomplish, to get through, and not only just to get through, but possibly to thrive through this and to gain things they never would have normally gained. And to be able to be open-minded to negotiation, to working it through, to trying to give them some of what they need, to be able to discuss why not, and be very open and forthright and transparent. And then that second piece of being able to help expand their boundaries and their connections and who they're connected with outside of the homes, because that will often help people to feel that they're not completely secluded and that there is meaning in what they do. The last piece before I open it up for questions, you know, I opened with my joke, which wasn't a joke, about the idea that my kids were like, you know, gonna come and be like, oh, you're gonna listen to her about parenting, you know. But one of the things I try really hard to do, and I think often works well, is this idea of going back to transparency. You know, I am very open with my kids that this is really hard for me, and that I'm going to have hard days, and I'm going to have hard hours and hard moments, and I may lose it at times, and I may need to give myself a timeout, right? But that rarely does it really have to do with them. And that when I come back out, when I get over it, when I yell, I will go back to them within the hour or so and say, oh, I'm sorry, I was having a bad moment. I realized that, and I'll try to say what I learned from it or how I can try to prevent it, or maybe just that, I'm so sorry, I'm having one of those. That was not your problem. I should not have reacted like that. Okay, let's do better. Because what I've also set up then is that my kids can say, sorry, Mom, I was just really frustrated, like, because I didn't understand what Rebbe was saying on the phone. I didn't really understand the lesson. And so that's why, like, I ended up just taking that thing from my brother, and right, I shouldn't have done it. It's okay. I'll apologize. Let's move on. I want your kids to feel, you know, I started also by saying that I'm in the trenches with you as parents, like we're all together in this. I want your family to feel that way too. Like, you're all together. This is hard for every single one of you, but you're a team together in the trenches. You're a team together, not just in the trenches, but possibly thriving and building relationships in moments. You know, there's all these like stories and things and messages being passed around, like, don't wish your way through it. These are the memories. 20 years from now, you're going to wish that you could have this time back. And I'm not saying those aren't true. I'm just saying, depending on my mental state, some days I'm like, that's so right. I need to appreciate that. And other days I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you joking me right now? Are you in my house right now? Stop sending me messages like that, right? But what I do think is one of the greatest things we can do is create the sense of team at home. We are a team. And as a team, we might all struggle, and I struggle here and you struggle here, but we apologize, we learn from it, we ask for what we need, and we do better from here. So I know that's what I'm trying to do every single day. I know part of the reason I said yes to this is so that I could almost bolster myself and everything I need to do to be able to be there for my kids and my family and for myself. And I really just hope that this was somewhat helpful in being able to bolster you as well. Okay, so Shira, I don't know if there's any questions on the chat part or if there's any other questions.
Thank you, Rachel, that was great. I literally found myself nodding along with pretty much everything you were saying, the good days and the bad days and the beautiful moments, the falling apart moments. So a couple of questions we have here, and please, as I'm asking them, please feel free to people to use the Q&A on the bottom and type in your questions, and I will grab them and give them over to Rachel. Okay, so how do you balance so many different people's boundaries at one time?
Right, that's a good question, because you know, you could have one kid that says, I need to like be able to play a family game every day and like be occupied. And you have other kids who are like, I need everyone to leave me alone. And I need silence in the house. So it is a lot of trying to be able to say, okay, you know, that maneuvering of, I see you and I hear, can you get that after the younger kids are in bed? Like if you need an hour of quiet and I'm not quite seeing how that's going to work here, I want to be able to give that to you though. I think that's the most important part. I hear you. I see you. It's so important. Can you do it at 8 o'clock at night, or does it need to be at 4 o'clock? Right? So that kind of like managing, massaging almost of it, it can be really important. If you have a kid that likes to be on their own, but another kid who really needs that interaction with their siblings because they're like shriveling without people, be like, listen, I know being with people is hard for you and you'd like to be more alone, but your brother really loves when you like go play this with him. Could you do that with him? And I'll make sure that you get extra quiet time because of this. Like, I know that might deplete you more. So let's see if maybe after that I can give you something different. So it's really also, because then what you can do is when you're coming to the kids and expressing different needs, right? Then you can be able to, you know, to not only like figure out a way to make all the needs work, but also get across to each one of your kids, there are multiple players here and multiple needs, and you are a big player, but so is everybody else. So it's a lot of trying to do, and I can't say you're always going to be successful. I know I'm not, but it's the discussion and the maneuvering and and making that kid feel a priority that really are the most important parts.
Okay, it's getting late, so I'm just going to choose one or two more questions. How do you know when something is a normal reaction, what you're seeing in one of your children, and when they really need help?
That's a really hard question. It's a good one though. I think that if you know that your kid in the past has struggled with anxiety, depression, some type of OCD, some type of eating disorder, drugs, any of those type of issues, and you're worried again now, and they're not currently in help, I would get help sooner rather than later. Because we do know that during times of crisis, oftentimes we fall back into more negative patterns. So I will say that just blanket wise, that if there has been a past issue, I would go as soon as possible. As soon as you're sensing that there's something like not right. The second thing I would say is that, you know, I would give it a few days. I would give it a week or two. You know, I think a lot of people were very concerned like before Pesach, but we saw that kids kind of rallied and did better after Pesach. So I would say that if your kids seem to be depressed before Pesach and you were like, okay, let's wait. And right now still, they're very unmotivated. They used to not be so hard to get them out of bed. Now they're impossible to get out of bed. They're not able to really get to class. They just seem, they're operating, they're not able to operate. Obviously, a lot of us aren't able to do as much or concentrate on the screen or learn as well, but they just seem to be kind of shutting down, and or the kind of anxiety seems to be keeping them from being able to function as well. I guess it's a matter of functionality. If they're unable to do what's needed of them right now, then I think it's enough. And that's why we're really lucky to have Madrigos Midwest in Chicago, because they're a tremendous resource for our adolescents to reach out and say, do you think this is normal? Do you think this needs an assessment? And where do you think we can go from here? You're never going to be wrong for making the phone call. But you will not be happy in the long term if you let things go on too far when it comes to them just completely not functioning.
Okay, we're actually getting some more questions, which are really great. So let's see if we can answer these quickly and wrap up.
Okay.
Should we be concerned if some of our children or one of our children seem to be too okay?
You have to know your own kid. If there's something that just feels wrong about it and there's something in your gut, it could always be worth your while to talk it through with a professional, or talk it through even with their teacher first to see what they think, in terms of behavior. But I will say that there are kids who are genuinely doing better. Whether it's because the social piece is taken away, whether it's because the workload is less, whether it's because, do you know what it means for a lot of teenagers that they can sleep till 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning as opposed to getting up at 7? In functionality, it actually means light years. So I would not be too worried if they seem to be okay, because they genuinely might be. But if there's something in your gut that's like, I really don't like this, something just feels too wrong, too fake, to put a happy face on, then it's worthwhile to first go to the kid and say, is everything really okay? Like, there's something inside of me that wonders, and then possibly to talk to a professional about it.
Okay, and last question for the evening. How do I allow my child to get personal space without it becoming a way to avoid responsibility and be abused? For example, letting them miss a class if they need a breather without it being abused multiple times.
I apologize to this question asker. I meant to talk about that and like missing class and things like that. I think this has to be a discussion with your kid. I believe, one of the students called me and said that it was towards like the end of the day, she had a headache. It just felt like too much. She felt like short of breath, like everything was fine in school that day. It was enough. And she said, her mom said, close the computer, you're taking a walk, you'll come back in 10 minutes, I'll email the teacher for you and come back. And she did. And she felt like a completely new person after 10 minutes of air, right? So I think that we do have to be able to say to your kid, what do you need in order to make this work? But if they're always missing class, if they're really not able to keep up, I think we have a bigger issue. So it's being able to go back to the kid and saying, I need you to know that my expectation is that you're at class at least 90% of the time. I'm willing for you to say to me once a week, I need an hour break. Like, I will give you a pass for an hour each week. Or I will give you extra screen time, an hour later of a bedtime. Is there something else you need that will make going to class and making this work, or doing the rest of your responsibilities work? I'm happy to help. What do you need in order to do this? May be about what do you need in order to do school? What do you need? It also is worth a phone call with the teacher, with the administrator, to say, my kid isn't doing well. Do you think it's worth it for me to push it? Because they may have knowledge of your child and of their abilities to be able to say, let's figure out a plan. Maybe they don't need to be doing everything of this, and let's try to figure something out, depending on your kid. But if you know your kid can do better and you know they're taking advantage, right? Then first is to talk about negotiation, then it's trying to figure out what they need. And then it's like, these are the expectations. And if they still can't do it, then again, I think it's time to consult with a professional, because what is it about this that's making them kind of cocoon and not be able to do this? And we might need more skills and more things to be able to kind of manage the difference. A lot of teenagers kind of like almost end up shutting down when it's not as it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be in school. I'm not supposed to have to learn on the computer. I've heard that a bunch of times in the last 2 weeks. This isn't normal, so I shouldn't necessarily have to do it. You're right, and part of succeeding in life is your nimbleness, is your ability to be like, oh, this didn't work, so we try this. Oh, this didn't work. You want to be successful in business, you want to be successful as a parent, you want to be successful in anything. This is what I would say to your kid. You have to be able to maneuver. And so this is one of the things I need you to be able to maneuver. And if you can't do it, then we have to help you get the skills you need in order to be able to do it.
Thank you, Rachel. That was really, really great. Super practical. Very practical, very clear. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us. Please come join us again next week, same time, same place, on your screen at home, 9 o'clock, for Rabbi Joey Rosenfeld, who will be speaking on lonely but not alone, isolation and addiction. Have a good night.
Thank you.